Davis, broker in charge with Karan B Realty. And today I have another question from someone asking what's the difference between a cooperative versus a condo versus apartment building, condo building, co-op building. So um, I looked up on Wikipedia to get some history of it, and it's actually pretty interesting. Um, the first known referenced written uh, condo was in the first century Babylon, where they had some sort of multi mud shack, I guess, that was co-owned, and they had some documentation on that. It's also interesting the different names that different countries have for defining a condo. We use condo, condominium down under, and I believe also Canada uses strata. The United Kingdom uses common hold. South Africa is sectional title. France is co-property. And interestingly, HPR, for those of you that have been in the business a long time, which is the name for the body of law that incorporates the multi-use, so condos and cooperatives, apparently started in Puerto Rico, of all places. And that was in the early 1900s. And then something happened where it was updated in 1958. And that's when it took off across the entire country. And Utah was one of the first to get there first and do a multifamily property. That was 1960 in Utah. And then it just exploded after that. I mean, Waikiki, for example, started its construction boom phase in the early 1960s with all the high rises. So condoing a big building was a great idea to have multiple ownership of units. So, okay, so let's just use an example of a tall building. Let's say it's 20 stories tall. And if it's one owner, it's an apartment building, one owner, and you have rentals in all the units. Let's say it's 20 stories and 100 units. So you have 100 units renting in an apartment building, and they all send their checks to one person. All right, so in a condo, 20 stories, 100 units, you've got possibly 100 different owners. And that's called a condominium. And then you can have the same thing, but it's incorporated differently, and you have a co-op. Okay, so it's a multi-unit structure. That's the definition, multi-unit structure. And you have, for condo and co-op, you have the ownership of the common areas. In an apartment building, it's the single owner owns everything, 100%. But when you condo or co-op, then you have ownership of the common areas. You want to be able to use the elevator and the walkways and the hallways and the swimming pool and tennis courts, all that sort of thing. And in a condo and co-op, you're allowed to do that. Okay, so a co-op is a little bit different in its incorporation. It's a nonprofit, and you have an interest or a share in the entire building, and a contract or a lease that allows an owner to occupy a unit. You can get a share of stock in a co-op. A condo, you simply own the unit. A co-op, you do not own the unit. Co-ops are collectively owned and own a share in a nonprofit corp. So the corp grants a proprietary lease granting permanent rights to live in their units and to use the common elements. Okay, so what's the difference? Okay, I've owned or do own a condo and a co-op. I've owned them for years, and there's not that much difference. The only thing is when you start. So when you buy it, there will be a little bit of a difference on how you go about it. But once you own it, there's no difference. There's nothing appreciable that uh, is different in your day-to-day life of living there or having an investment and renting it. So the beginning part, which is different, so I'll go over that. For a co-op, there's only a few banks that in Hawaii will lend on them. They want a larger down payment, like 30%, instead of all the different types that you might be able to get from 0 to 5% to 10% to 20% on a condo. So co-ops are usually 30% down payment. That would be one of the biggest differences. And then when you're buying into a co-op, there may or may not be a board inquiry. It's kind of a fossil of the past. And I say that because in the 1980s, Governor Ariyoshi allowed foreclosure rights by the banks on individual co-op units. So the reason that they the co-ops had such a rigorous board inquiry of each individual is because if they didn't pay and a foreclosure had to start, it was against the entire building. Because remember, you're part of the whole in a co-op. So Governor Ariyoshi allowed for the banks to foreclose on just that individual lease within the co-op. That was a game changer. So that opened up financing and made the co-op so much more like a condo. But then you go like the East Coast and New York, and they love co-ops over there. And they use it as a way to discriminate against different buyers. And yes, you can discriminate for hundreds of things against different people, as long as it's not part of the federal or state sex, religion, all those. I think there's up to 15 now different things that you may not discriminate against. But it was really for the financial scrutiny to begin with. But now, maybe you don't want Donald Trump in your co-op. You could say, no, I don't want past presidents to live in our building and have all the Secret Service and the notoriety and the congestion, maybe, that sort of thing. So that's one thing that a co-op could discriminate against. There's another thing, co-ops, I've noted in Hawaii at least, that the real property taxes are less in most of the co-ops. And it's probably related to the tax office having to only send one tax bill instead of 50 tax bills to individuals or 100. They just send one to the management company, and it's part of the real property taxes are collected within the maintenance fee and paid out that way. So there's one check that goes to the tax office. Instead of like a condo, you can't do that. So they get as many tax bills as there are units there. So each condo unit owner would have to send their own tax bill in. So that's another difference. All right, so that's it. An apartment building is the easiest because that's just one owner, he gets one tax bill, and he can get financing too, but that's a commercial financing, not residential, to buy an apartment complex. So there you have it. Condo, co-op, apartment building, definition, and some history for you. All right, and that's it. And again, if any of you want me to talk about some other topic, I'd love to hear from you. All right, thanks so much.